the cloud. And
Got it.
I still got full on the thing. All right, so your question was like, is it the same way that you would assign? Is the same way
It's a
that you would assign a sub two the way that you would assign a regular assignment, right?
Cash deal.
yeah.
And it's
Regular
similar.
cash.
It's very similar, but what Chris explained is exactly right. You can make more. So imagine here's the subject property, here's a house, and you run the numbers, and it's a deal at $100,000 in cash. The cash offer at $100,000 makes it a deal because you can go and assign it or whatever the case is, right? Cool. So if I were to have to come in with cash,
Oh, I get it. I
yes,
get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. I
yes.
get it. So
So if
that
I had
difference
to
would be your assignment fee. Got it. Got it.
exactly, right? If it's a deal at a
Got
hundred
it. Got it.
thousand dollars, if I go to the seller and say, "Hey, Mr. Seller, I ran these numbers. If I give you $20,000 now, and then the rest over time, would this work for you?" And if they say yes, then what you would do is you would go and assign it. But if it works at 100,000, it still works at 100,000, and
Mhm.
you will be able to add in a greater fee. Now you could go and take that cash, you could go take that assignment and go sell it to a cash buyer and say, "Hey, Mr. Cash Buyer, I know you're going to flip this, but look, I just reduced your entry fee what effectively is
37%.
25%. So now let
Yeah.
me instead of you having to come with $100,000, how about you just give me 50? And if the seller's only getting 20,000, then you still get 30.
Yeah.
Or if that works for you, here's another option. You could go to a sub two buyer and say, look, if this is your if what you care about is having something that has less than a 5% entry fee, and you care about something that has a total, excuse me, you care about something with less than a 5% down payment, and you care about a total entry fee of less than 15% with a certain amount of cash flow and all those other things. If I meet those metrics for you, nothing else matters. So imagine in this deal where $20,000 works for the seller, and at $100,000, it still meets a metric of less than 5% down on the
Correct.
deposit, down
Entry
payment,
fee.
and its
Yeah.
entry fee less than 15%. If those
Yeah.
numbers still work for your sub two buyer, then it still works.
Yeah.
It just does. And so knowing what your buyer needs is super important because you literally, when you do the math on these, I will figure out all the hard numbers from the deal. I will figure out what this is why I built the formulas and built the tool the way I did, because I need to be able to see when I hit the 10 to 15% threshold. When I put all the numbers in without my assignment fee, I say, okay, cool. With all these numbers in and all these assumptions done with all the cash to buyer and the commissions and the closing costs and all those things, I'm at 6% entry
Yeah.
fee. So I'm going to go and add 9% to this until it hits the 15% threshold. And when I do that, it turns out that it's a $40,000 assignment fee for me. If
Hmm.
that works by the numbers, then it doesn't matter. The buyer cares that the down payment isn't too high and that the total entry fee isn't too high. And if it meets those
So
thresholds, everything else is made up.
okay. So when we were
Well,
talking up,
the ROI has to meet, but
correct. But
go
so when we
ahead.
were talking about so when you mentioned 100,000, is that for is that the purchase price?
The 100,000 would be so the 100,000 would be the purchase price. It could be, it depends.
That the buyer
Can I
In
try
applies?
this
to explain it to
example,
him?
give it a shot, Chris, but let me finish this. Let me finish the answer.
Gotcha. Yes.
The 100,000, depending on the deal, would be
Yeah.
the all in entry. So on the buyer side, the 100,000 is the entry fee. So if the entry fee all in, everything paid is less than 50%, great. Maybe, depending on what the numbers are, the 100,000 is a total down payment of less than 5%. The bigger the deal, the more different the numbers. So if we're talking about a 5% down
Basically, the
on
answer
a
is yeah.
deal, if we're talking about
Basically,
5%
yeah.
down as an entry fee, I mean, 15% of an entry fee, what is that? If I do 100,000 divided by 0.15, then we're
Yes,
talking
ma'am.
about a $600,000 property. So if we're talking about a 600,000, it's like 666,000. If I'm talking about a $666,000 property, if all in, all of the costs are less than 100,000, then that could still be a deal. Just knowing what a deal is in the community,
Oh, so this still is a deal, even if
it
I
still
did
could
give the
be.
seller more.
It could
Got it.
be.
Got it. Got it.
And
Got it. Got it.
so,
Got
and
it.
that's what that's what we're talking about. If I'm looking at $600,000 and I say I don't want to give the seller more than 5% down because that cash is gone. the money down has to show up to escrow. And that's why on the LOI it's shown as cash to
Cash
escrow,
to escrow.
because that's
Okay.
what has to go and disappear out of the deal. It has to go to the seller, it has to go to the agent, it has to go to closing. It's gone. It's gone, and you're never gonna see it. So on a $600,000 deal, it's 30 grand, which is coincidentally, we're talking about the same numbers here. Interestingly enough, we were kind of,
Yeah.
I was using hypotheticals, but the numbers are still applicable here. So
Yeah.
30,000
Yeah.
down, all in, 30,000 down is 5% of 600,000. It can work. If the deal is all in entry fee between the seller, cash to escrow, and all those things, including your assignment, at no more than 15%, which is in this case $100,000, it can still work. So right now, what are we looking at? This is going to tell you
Hold
what
on,
your
hold on.
assignment is.
Now, sometimes, most times I say not going too fast, but now you're going a little bit too fast for me. So I understand this part, but I'm still not understanding how I can look at this particular deal and be like, okay, this is how I can calculate my assignment.
Yeah, that's literally what we're about to do.
Let me try.
Okay.
Let me
That's what it
calculate the
is.
assignment. Let me
He's a
calculate the
numbers
assignment with them.
person,
Let me calculate the
and
assignment,
I'm
and
more
then you
of a,
take
just
it.
like a,
Yeah. I
like,
think Chris is
what
gonna
would
hit you.
just say it.
Let me show you the number for your
he's
assignment.
breaking
and then
he's
Chris
breaking
will
it down
explain
to you. That's super important what he's saying, obviously, because that's how you do it. But
Yeah.
but the concept of it is basically, let's say you want to buy the property, right? And I'm assuming it's sub 2 deal. This house is not in too much. Well, it really doesn't matter. But is this house in bad shape or not, or what? Is it in
No, it's
good
not.
shape? Move, it's turnkey ready and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
And the
so
pictures, yeah.
okay, so basically, okay, so let's say to get that house, and if it's turnkey ready, I'm pretty sure they got a price somewhere close to what a retail buyer would probably buy it for, right?
Correct.
So if you was to come in as an investor and you can get a house that's basically turnkey ready, that's worth all that value, you just get it, and you can get it for like a very, very low entry fee, then and then all the other numbers and stuff like that work. If somebody was to buy it at 100,000, then like that's cool. What are you coming in at? 30,000, right?
Right
Cash to
now,
escrow.
estimated cash to escrow would be 30,000. So 5,000
Yeah.
to the seller, 20,000 to the agent, and then the rest are just the fees included from the transaction.
You want to know what the assignment is on this one?
Yeah.
You know what it is?
It's that
It's like-
different.
it's $60,000.
But how would you know that though?
All right, so here's so we can do it. Get your calculator up. We're gonna do it live.
I got it right here.
We're gonna, all right.
It ain't
So
help.
so let's start with the purchase price, the actual listing price, because it tells you a lot about it, right? But let's start. Well, let's start with the ARV. So the approximate ARV on this one is like, what's the ARV on this one? It's like 625, 630.
I don't even remember. I have to look
So
again.
let's just use 600 for the snapshot. Let's just say it's 600, right? So start
What
with
is it
600.
listed at?
599, 600,000.
Yeah. I think we looked at this one. I think I pulled it up, but I don't really remember
What's
the
their
numbers.
mortgage
So,
balance?
316, is that the one? Oh,
540.
different one. My bad. Okay. Cool.
540. Okay, so they want to, and it's listed at 600. They want to break
Yeah.
even. They got to pay the
Yeah.
agent.
Yeah, so we ran the numbers on it. So what it would look like is they'd have like $17,000. No, as you were, it's like $12,000 net.
Correct,
But
12.
then they also have a 8,500 use as you choose. So out of the $12,000 they had, they're giving up 8,500 of it to the buyer. So they're willing to walk away with 3,500 clean. And that's important to know. But let's just focus on this particular number and how you would get your assignment. So you start with the purchase, like the ARV. That's
Correct.
because we're thinking on the buyer side of the T, right? You take this,
Yeah.
the ARV, multiply, find out what 15% of this is. This is the maximum entry fee this is the highest that in general, most people in the community want to pay. So it's, what is 15%?
Okay, I see how you do the intro. Okay, this makes sense now. Okay, yes, 90,000.
So 90,000. So 90,000
Okay, yeah.
minus what is your cash to escrow as
30,000.
it is right now? 30,000. Now that cash to escrow includes closing costs, agent, cash to seller. You can say your closing costs already, right?
Yep.
It also includes your assignment fee. Well, it doesn't include your assignment fee. So all those other three things are captured. You would also account for arrears if there's any money owed. Do they owe any money? Do they owe any loans or liens?
I don't know.
Not loans, liens.
I have to
Okay, so
ask.
that's a question. So assuming that assuming they don't owe anything for the HOA, the total cash to escrow to close out this deal for them is 30,000. So if you can go up to 15%, whatever the difference between what the cash to escrow is on the buyer side and the maximum entry fee is all assignment. And so remember that it's about the buyer. If the buyer says, if I said to you, Earl, here's what I need you to do. Find me a property that doesn't have higher than 15% entry fee, that has, of that entry fee, only maximum of 5% of the total cost is down payment to the seller. I only want to give up 5% cash to the seller, because otherwise they're going to want, because some of the sellers are going to want a huge down payment, and I don't want to deal with that. That's not a real good creative deal for me, or maybe that's just not my profile, right? I want to give the seller nothing and up to 5%. I want to give them 5% of the ARV and less. I would
Oh, so
ideally
the
say
difference
no.
would be the 10%. Got it. So if we're giving them 5%, our difference would be the 10%.
No,
Oh,
no. So the 5% is a separate number. When I say 5%, what I'm saying is whatever the total. So use 600,000, the ARV, the total value of the property, and find out what 5% of that is.
30,000.
Okay. So I don't want to give the seller more than $30,000 directly. Now so in theory, let's look at it this way. If
You
the
mean the
total
seller
amount
directly
cash
30,000.
to the seller, exactly,
Got it,
not
got it,
cash
got
to
it, got it,
escrow.
got it, got it, got it, got it,
So
got
if
it,
the
got it.
total, if the maximum I want to give all together is 90,000, and the
Yeah.
maximum that I'm willing to give the seller is 30,000, then the rest of that $60,000 is fees, commissions, arrears, and assignment fee. So let's say that. So right now you're not giving the seller 30,000, you're giving the seller 44,000, right? So 4,000. So you're nowhere near the maximum entry for your cash to seller,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to give more than 5%. For me, just in general, most people are like, if I have to give the seller more than 5%, I'm not doing it. I might as well just go get a bank loan, right? Because the bank's going to want 10, 15, 20% down. Those numbers are conventional loan numbers. I'm doing things that are good for me as a businessman, right?
Correct.
So 5% cash to the seller max. However much of that is of the entry fee, that's a different thing that we're going to go over now. So in this case, 5% max, but you're not even near that. You're at $4,000. $4,000 out of 600,000 is less than 1%. You're like 0.06, right? Like,
Yeah.
great, good. So, and this is why it's important, because they've already shown that they'll take 3,500. So yeah, I'll give you more than you were going to get. How much more? You can make it sweeter, because right now you're looking at a $60,000 assignment, but you're still kind of close. So what if you said you can give them $10,000?
Yeah.
Okay, it's still a $50,000 assignment for you. That's still pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
Right? So hey, Mr. Seller, I'll give you. I'm looking at my number. I can give you 10,000. Right? That's
I'm
maybe
gonna
you
say
don't start there.
7,500.
7,500. That's solid, bro. 7,500, right?
Yeah.
So if you say 7,500 to the seller,
Yeah.
and then you say 21,000 to the agent who will only do one side,
28,500.
plus 5,000 in closing costs approximately for the transaction coordinator and all the paperwork is going to be done.
33.
You're at 33,500. We already
Yeah.
know that the maximum of 15% is 90,000. So do
Yeah.
whatever. What is the delta? The delta between them is 56,500. And so in theory, if you have a buyer that is willing to pay no more than 15% entry fee, but it doesn't matter what it's made up of, right? Maybe the agent is charging like 87%, something crazy, or maybe there's arrears and things like that, because usually what you'll have is there's taxes owed and shit like that. It doesn't matter as long as the numbers are within the threshold. It doesn't matter what the composition of those numbers are. It could be agent says, I'm comfortable with making no money on this deal as long as this
Yeah.
seller, who is my great aunt, is taken care of. And the seller's like, I want $10,000 and I want you to pay off my debts and I want you to do. He's like, all right, cool. Does the math work? I don't like the deal. I don't like the terms, but do the math work? If the
Yeah.
math works and my buyer says the math works and my buyer will commit, I don't give a damn. And I
Yeah.
fit in as well. So if it was all in, all the other cost was $80,000 and you can make 10,000 on this deal, that's still a good deal
A deal.
as long
Yeah.
as you have a buyer for it. And that's why having the buyer is so important on the creative side, because everything that you do is based on your buyer's tolerances. It's the same
Hey,
thing for cash, but
no, I was gonna say, no, I appreciate that. I was gonna say, I don't really like being hand-holded, but if I could get some assistance in this deal, I'm pretty sure that any other deal she has similar to this, that she will send to me.
bro, you already know I'm here with you. Like, let's
Yeah.
do it. Is that a real question? I got your back, bro. Whatever
No,
it
'cause
takes.
I know how some people are, because I know you don't want to waste your time on it. But if this is potentially, a deal, then
Yeah,
shit,
let's do it.
it could be
Yeah,
other
yeah.
deals like this.
Bro, tip of my
It
nose
will
itches
be.
right here, man. Oh my
No, you're
God.
right, Chris. It
I got
will be.
dry nose.
It
It will
will
be.
be, bro.
But yeah, so you
Old ass.
already
You better
know.
send me
You
all
already
them damn
know.
deals.
Exactly.
While
You
you're
already know
recording.
that as is listed. No, you're good. We'll just clip that. We'll just clip it. Let me just stop. Let me just stop it right now. Let me just stop it right now.